On behalf of all the members, I would like to thank you all for attending tonight. This is our annual awards banquet, and hope you all enjoy that. And we're all glad to see you here. And with that, Jerry McWhorter is going to be our gracious MC for the evening, and he will go through the program and he will do all the announcing. So Jerry, if you'd like to come up here.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks so much for coming, everybody. As you all know, the ACA spares no expense and has hired the best talent they could afford. And I'm the only one that signed up for free, so I'm him. Thank you so much for coming. The ACA is darn near 20 years old. That's something we're going to talk about more, and hopefully we'll do something special next year. And it's been a great association for all of us, and we're grateful that this has turned into such a fun event. We've got a lot of things to go over tonight and a lot of fun moments that we'll be able to talk about. But first of all, we want to acknowledge our sponsors that help all of this happen. Diamond Billiards, QU.com, and Simonis are our two primary sponsors. Ivan was here a few minutes earlier but had to leave for other reasons. But we want to thank them and acknowledge them. They help make all this stuff happen. Now the cameras, they're flashing already. I feel like a celebrity. It's a wonderful thing. As long as we're acknowledging important people, I would like to get the board members of the ACA to stand up and the different officers of the ACA to stand up, that we can acknowledge them for all of their hard work. They all want to look around and see if the other guy does. I want to thank them very much. They do a lot of extra work. They do work throughout the year and are in constant communication with each other to make all of these events and all the different programs we have work, and we want to again thank them. I know many of you guys have been watching the news, and the earthquake in Japan and the tsunami is just such a heartbreaking experience that's continuing to unfold with a lot of bad news. With that in mind, one of the things is that we've really become a family with the industry, and the Japanese friends that we've made have all been very important to our businesses, but very important to us personally. And the ACA had an idea that we wanted to go to each of the ACA members and take a collection of funds as for the Japanese Tsunami Relief Fund. And many of the Cuemakers, we all got together and contributed money to that. Dave Jacoby has the Secretary Treasurer has taken the money, and then they've converted it into an ACA check. And Dave Jacoby has a check that he would like to present. And if we could get Kohara to come up as kind of our staff. Where are you? Kohara, many of you know. Please come join us for a moment. He is our staff photographer for the 20 years that we've been in association with the ACA. And he writes many articles in Japan and is been just a great friend to the industry as a translator, and is bringing players over and just a big supporter. So we want to ask you to take the responsibility that we would like to have Dave present this check to you, and it's a blank check. So when you get home, we want you to find a relief organization that you think would be best suited and fill that name in and make that donation on our behalf. Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
I'd just like to reiterate what Jerry said. Through the years, the Japanese dealers and buyers and customers, they've not only become business partners or whatever, they're a lot of good friends. And I'm sure a lot of the Cuemakers, a lot of people here have been over there, and I've personally had dinner with Kyle, and it touches us deeply to see what happened, and it really hurts our feelings, and this is a small token of our appreciation.
What is the amount that we have, Dave?
$1,705 for the check. And it was donated by the Cuemakers in the Association today.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So please, make your choice and fill the check in and let us know.
Yeah.
I do want to add also, if any of you would like, that didn't know about the program and didn't know what we were doing, would like to make a donation, please do that with the ACA tonight, and we'll again write another check tonight and make that happen. So any of you in the room that feel like that's something that you'd like to participate in, please do that. Thank you, Kohara. You've got an important job.
A little bit high.
Stand tall, young man.
Check 1, 2. Okay. The first of all, I'm sorry, but I'm not a good English speaker. Sorry for my bad English ability. So my some misunderstanding may happen. So, but anyway, how can I say? Right after we got to here, we suddenly realized it's a very, very huge disaster. No one has experienced the tsunami and the earthquake, the 8.8 or 8.9. We Japanese used to have an earthquake frequently. So, but you know what? The 6 point something or 7 point something is big enough. 8 point something, it's no one could imagine. So even though many people are just in case of emergency in the tsunami, but the speed of the tsunami, 600 miles per hour, no one could survive. I heard that, let's say, 17,000 people, the town, only 7,000 people survived, and 10,000 people still missing. Missing means I don't know, or nobody knows. Me personally, tried to contact with my families and relatives, but telephone communication was so busy, so my phone call could not go through. So it took 2 days that all my families and relatives are safe. But still, the number of casualties piling up. Let's say currently, let's say 1,500 people were killed, were missing, but it's not a total. Even now, it's that number is piling up. So it's kind of the national disaster. And I thought myself, why I'm here? I should go back to Japan immediately because I can do nothing when I'm here. But my wife called me yesterday. She encouraged me. You have to stay here. You stay here and do your job, covering the event, taking pictures for the Japanese magazine. That's all you should do now is you can do anything after you go back to Japan. So you think about supporting family, relatives after you go back to Japan. Right now, that's the reason why I'm just focusing this event, the covering Super Video Expo for the Japanese magazine, and try to extend how beautiful the American pool world is to the Japanese readers. And I was so moved. Many American Cuemakers, collectors, and friends said to me, "You are our family." So, you know, I'm not American. I'm a Japanese. Nationality is different, but you all guys treat me or treat our my friends as a family. So, how world is small, and I was so moved by that relationships. You know what? We buy cues and pay money and got fine cues. That is just a transaction, but relationship among us, among Japanese and American people, is just priceless. We cannot trade that relationships. It's a trust and joy to communicate, different countries, people. So thank you for all. And I cannot. My English is not good enough to express my thought. But thank you for all, and thank you for the raising the money for the helping Japanese who is damaged by this tsunami and the big earthquake. Probably I will take the Japanese Red Cross for that donation. I think that is best way for use that money. So I will have that all responsibility to put this fund properly. I promise. Thank you very much. Thank you for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Steve Klein, where are you in the room? There you are. Steve, would you stand up for a second? Steve Klein is our treasurer for the ACA. And again, if any of you would like to make a donation, please do that tonight. It can be cash, check, whatever. And the ACA funds, we're pushing that along. So hopefully we can pass another check on to Kohara before they return home. What did you forget?
Check.
Oh. Yeah. In comedy, timing is everything, Kohara. So. It's again, a lot of long-term relationships are forged in the ACA. There's many of you that I have seen way more than I've seen my own family. You know, we've been coming here 18 years. 19 years that Alan's been doing the show. I've come here to this location every single year, which many of you have, and spent days and days and many conversations and relationships and family and cousins that I don't even know. So I cherish those relationships. One of the other things is that from the time all the people that we get to know, the circle gets pretty big, and so when we do lose people every year, and it's a tragic event. I do want to send out our condolences to Paul Finale's, I get the pronunciations, family, and to Bert Schrager, who we just lost this year. And they were both important Cuemakers in our history, and we want to send best wishes to them. Let's move along to something a little bit more joyous, at least for Keith Josey. Cuemaker of the Year is something that we've been initiating here since 2008, and our first inductee, I don't remember who it was, but it was a great idea, and it's something that's been continued ever since. And so we want to move along to that. Keith Josey of Savannah, Georgia's finest, has been selected as Cuemaker of the Year this year. So yes, thank you. We're going to have a couple of speakers come up and say a few things, and as the whole program unfolds, we'll have different people saying things. But at the end, we would like to do a formal photo shoot. So as photo ops seem to be appearing, let's try to push them to the end and get it all together. First, let me take a second and introduce Dale Perry, who is a longtime friend of Keith's, and get him to say a few words, and we'll proceed from there.
Thank you. This is a lot of fun getting to do Cuemaker of the Year. Jerry's great recipient. I've got a list of dates here I'm going to go through real quick, and I'm going to tell you what Keith Josey's really like. He started doing repair work in '89, first Q, '92, made a seamless transition from manual Q making to CNC in '99. He's been in the ACA since 1995. He's been a board member since 2000. I suspect he'll be a board member forever, if I had to guess. He's American Q is discovered in Billiard Digest, Pool and Beard, Savannah Magazine. He's been in the newspaper, woodworking, all that stuff. He says his Qs have medieval details, but he still does the traditional stuff that we all do. He is a friend. He's been a friend forever, and he's endured a lot of calming me down over the years. I tell you, and when I need to talk to somebody, I call Keith, because he's the first person I call to, and he's a calm guy. And if it's July or August and you need to move your Q shop and you're in Florida, he'll come help in the heat, in the 95-degree heat, help you move your Q shop without being asked. He just shows up on the day it's going to happen. And with that said, I'm going to introduce Keith Josey, Cuemaker of the Year.
Thank you, Dale. Appreciate the compliments. I'm very humbled in receiving this award. There's a lot of other Cuemakers that deserve it out there also. I'd like to also thank Wayne Gunn, Dale Perry, Dan James, Dad. Yeah, I bugged Dan James so much he just went ahead and adopted me. I call him Dad. Tim Lake, he's our designer. He's my brother from another mother. My wife, Sherry, would you please stand up? My son, Daniel. he, he's been called Justin Bieber I don't know how many times at this show, so I wish we had his money, huh, Daniel? My brother Mark, he's been a big inspiration to me. He's bipolar, so he's got about 8 people in his head, so when he calls me, I have to listen to all 8 of them. But I really am excited about getting this award, and I really thank y'all. I do want to share one thing about a few people. Dale Perry, Wayne Gunn. When I first got started, Wayne Gunn, I went down and seen Wayne Gunn, took my vacation from work, and spent my time with him, and he taught me the repair work. And once I got going with that, I would go see, call Dale Perry one day. I wanted to go down there and talk to him and show him a cue I was working on. And we went in his shop, and Dale reminds me of the Tasmanian devil. I mean, I walked in the shop, and he was buzzing around that shop so fast, I went, my God, honey, what's he on? I got to get some of that. And I handed him a cue, and I was letting him look at it, and he saw a few, flaws or some scratches in the stainless steel, so he went over to one of his lathes, and he fired it up, and I went, good God, that thing's running fast, because I had mine on the slowest speed it would go. If y'all know, it just like chugging along. So Dale fires his up, and it's going 300,000 miles an hour. I'm like, oh, my God. Then he goes over to this buffer, and he turns his buffing wheel on, and he goes, I mean, if you could just see him running around in his shop, it was like, oh, my God, this guy's just, man, no wonder he gets so much work done. I got to pick it up. But Dale's been a big inspiration to me. He's been a good friend. And like I said, we talk all the time. And, again, I just want to thank everybody for this award. And I'm very humble, and thank you very much.
Let's get him to actually present the award for you.
Okay.
Before I give Keith the award here, I just want to mention that, and this goes back an awful long ways. Before Keith was into the cue making, he did cue repair. And one night I was down in Savannah on a rainy Savannah night, and I was having trouble with my finish. And my oldest boy says, hey, there's a guy here in town. He says, does repairs. Why don't you call him? So I gave Keith a call. He had an appointment that night, but he still took the time to have me come over to his house. And like Keith says, we went to a little closet in the back of the house, and he took a lot of time and helped me develop a finish. And now not everybody in this industry can do that. And ever since then, through the years, Keith and I have been pretty good friends, and we've been in contact. And it's easy to see why he could be Cuemaker of the Year, and we are proud to have him as that. Keith.
How long can I stay here?
Not long. We'll take some important. We'll take photographs there at the end and get Keith up here with the family, and there you go. One of the things that from the very beginning that the ACA has instituted is the Hall of Fame. And as you see, we have the Hall of Fame picture up here, and you can see all the different people that have been inducted into the Hall of Fame, many that have passed on, some that are still with us. And the Hall of Fame committee has selected Tad Kohara as this year's Hall of Fame inductee. So we want to talk a little bit about that process, and we'll talk more about Tad. But let me introduce Jim Buss for a second to tell you a little bit about how all that happens.
I won't bore you like I did last time. Last time I went over the whole criteria, and we're not going to do that this year. We have it posted on our website. If you go to Cuemakers.org, click on awards, and you'll look down and see Hall of Fame. Click on that, and then it'll have a section where you can look up all the criteria that that we use to select the members. Now, when it came time to select, I got my notes here in my cell phone. I gotta find it now. The Hall of Fame committee consists of a cross-section of the industry here. We have, well, I'm the chairman, member of the ACA. We have two collectors, and that's Will Prout. Will, there's Will waving his hand. Rick Golden, he's here. I saw him. Where'd he go? We have representative of the media, and that's Tom Shaw of Pool and Billiard Magazine. Tom? We have three members of the Hall of Fame. Richard Black, Danny Janes, and Bill Schick. Bill's can't be here today. He told me he messed up his knee. That's not the exact words he used, but he messed up his knee and needs to have some surgery, so he couldn't make it today. But anyway, we get in we have our meeting, and we select possible members, or possible new inductees, and we narrow the field down until we come up with 3 names. And at that time, we send out those 3 names to all the voting members of the ACA. They send their vote in by email to 2 of our people. In fact, I miss Tom Waters. He's on here. I didn't scroll far enough. Tom, you here? Yeah, there's Tom over there. Anyway, we send the vote comes in to 2 of us. This time it was me and Tom, and we compare notes, make sure that if somebody didn't follow the directions and just send it to one person, which probably figures out to be about half of the Cuemakers don't read their email, but we compare it to make sure our numbers are matching. And if Tom didn't get one of the emails, I forward mine to him, so we make sure that nobody stuffs the ballot box, which I don't think is possible anyway. So, but anyway, this year came out to be Tad, and he's been well deserving, and we'll go on with the show tonight.
It's a pleasure for me to be able to induct Tad Kohara into the Hall of Fame, because he's been a longtime friend of mine and a Southern California Cuemaker, and somebody that has welcomed me into his shop, and somebody I've gotten to know over the years and is an important relationship for me. Tad was born in 1929 in San Pedro, California. So he was born an American citizen, but both of his parents had recently immigrated from Japan, and his connection with Japan has always been very strong. As a matter of fact, in his early teens, around 15, 16 years old, he was sent back to his native land and native town of Hiroshima, and was studied cabinet making at a trade school in Hiroshima in 1945, which proved to be a fairly eventful year for that city. And actually, the school that he was attending was destroyed by the atomic bomb, so that ended his cabinet making studies, and then did come back to the States and later married and started to raise a family. He opened a family billiards. He had been involved in some other businesses and opened a family billiards in the early 60s. And as we talked about with Keith, his progression to becoming a Cuemaker was very similar to many of our stories. And as a family billiard owner, he decided to go out and buy a lathe and start doing the repair work on his own cues, and was fixing tips and ferrules and of the house cues in his pool room. And then the next step was, of course, cutting the cues in half and, taking broken shafts with butts and putting joints on them and turning them into 2-piece cues. Then putting joint collars on them and putting butt caps on them. And then then very shortly after that, he started building the whole cue, and plain bird's eye cues was the first cues that he started building. No, actually, Titleist cues. He was getting the fancy Titleist butts, because those were the prettiest, putting those together and selling those. And the original prices were quite conveniently marked at $9.95. He was selling those original Titleist blank cues for $9.95, and then started building his own cues, plain bird's eye cues, And I talked to his son Fred, and he said he sold the pool room in about 1969, but at 69, Fred said that the plain bird's eye cues had gone all the way up to $29.95. And he had many of them hanging on the walls there in the pool rooms and was selling them, and customers would come in. Well, Tad is a craftsman from his cabinet interest from the beginning, from day one, and has made all of his own tools and all of his own machines and was just a real self-made man. And I asked Tad, talking to him, I said, have you ever been in other Cuemaker shops? And he says, no, never went to other Cuemaker shops. And I said, well, Ernie was down there too in the 70s, late 60s and 70s. And he said, I think I might have went to Ernie's shop too at one time, but I've been to his shop and he's made everything. Now he's another guy that's a machine tinkerer and has got literally 20 lathes lined up and do all different kinds of jobs. One of the early machines that I thought was really interesting, Ernie was telling me about. Ernie made a visit to Tad's shop, and he had created a shaft machine out of a lathe and with a saw blade cutting shafts, and built the tools, built the fixtures, the taper bars, everything, built it all himself, and was cutting these shafts. And Ernie says, but he had the shafts running like this, and he had the blade running like this. And he says, but when he was getting in the middle of the shaft, the chatter would create, and it'd snap and cut the shaft in half, and two pieces would go flying out into the room. So he then learned to decide, well, maybe you should turn the blade this way, and that's how he did it. So all of this was development that he came up with. And if you see Tad's shop, you'll see that it's stuff that you're not going to see anyplace else, which holds true with a lot of Cuemakers. It's not something that you learn online, I should say. And you've got to develop your own techniques. His career continued from there, where he really started developing a reputation as a good playing cue. Although Tad was not a pool player and didn't play, but he stayed very close contact with the players and designing a cue that felt good to them. And also he was very connected with the Japanese players. And Kohara made the best description to me. He said the Tad was a great bridge between Japan and the United States, because even early on in the 60s, he would bring Japanese players over to play in events, and he served as a translator and gave them a place to stay and took them around and took care of them. And of course, they all played with Tad cues and loved Tad cues. So very early on in Japan, the cue to have of professional players was a Tad cue, which has continued ever since. Big portion of his market is in Japan, and now subsequently has been into China through J&J. He was always his cues always made out of different plastics. He would search out and found different plastics. Didn't use ivory very often. Almost now, virtually never. And he had all the different plastics that he would use that all looked very good. One time, one of my favorite memories is going into his shop. Now, only Tad could get away with this, but this is what refinishing a cue came. A customer brings in a cue, and I was there. He throws the cue up on the lathe, hits it with some 220, hits it with a little 800 or 400, 800, very quickly, right over the wrap, right over the finish, everything. Wipes the cue down, ties a string on it, goes over to the doorway, gives the cue a little spin, grabs a lacquer gun, and just sprays the whole cue, wrap and finish straight from top to bottom. And then we sat back and talked for a while, and it would just spin for a little while. And an hour later, it was dry, and would pull it off, unscrew it, and the customer's got his cue. That's it. No polish, no nothing. And I asked Fred about that. I said, that's the way he did it. He says, that's still the way he does it. That's the way a Tad cue is finished. And he does say, he says, but the lacquers were so much better then. We have a hard time getting lacquers. Now, Tad is the only one that can get away with that. You go downstairs and we grab cues, and Cuemakers are standing there scrutinizing that finish, and any kind of scratch and the glare and how shiny it is and all this is finishing is a very important thing. Not for Tad. That's how it happens. So I think you think in terms of refinishing the cue with a Tad, it's just like service. You just bring it in there, and it's like your car needs a lube job every once in a while. You throw it up on the lathe, you give it the once over, you spray it, and you're off and running. That's how it's done. Well, Tad is very deserving for a lot of different reasons. He's been suffering from some pretty difficult health problems recently and was not able to travel and make it to this event. As a matter of fact, I would travel to Japan once a year, right around the All Japan tournament. I went to that tournament for many years and always saw Tad there. and we would spend some time sitting on the couches and talking cues. Well, hasn't been able to make that trip for several years either. He'd had went about with cancer, and has pretty much recovered from that, and he has diabetes real bad, and the idea of being able to sit in a plane for a long period of time is just not happening. I did talk to Tad yesterday in his shop. He's in there working every day. He's 82 years old and is in there doing what he does. And his son Fred has been involved in the business for a long time now. And it's a family business. Fred's mother is involved in the business, and they're there 5.5 days a week, building queues and taking care of their customers. So it's a pleasure to introduce him into the Hall of Fame. Most importantly, Tad is a great guy. He's a nice person, and I love being associated in the industry and outside of the industry, obviously, with nice people. That's an important thing. I would like to ask Richard Black, if we could, to come up and say a couple words. Some of you might have more difficulty recognizing Richard's plaque, his picture on the Hall of Fame plaque there, but there.
You usually wear the hat. Before I even started making cues back in the early 70s, I used to play daily with Jersey Red. And he was playing with a Tad at that time. Now, guys, listen to this. Red sent in his cue for a new shaft on a Monday. By that Friday, he had it back. Red never stopped talking about that. Everybody in that room knew how Tad had taken care of him. He wasn't out of his cue. Now, Cuemaker time sucks, okay? Tad did a great job, and I learned from it, and I try to get stuff out. You too.
I am going to make a trip down to Orange County when I get home this next week, and I'm going to bring the video camera, and I'm going to make a formal presentation to Tad and to Fred and to the family in the shop there, and we'll get it on video so that we can post it up on the website. And when I spoke to him on the phone yesterday, he was very appreciative and honored by it. But those of you that also might know Tad, he's not the most social person in the world, so the idea of being in front of people would be difficult enough. But with his health reasons, that just wasn't possible. I hope we can all continue to work as hard as he does well into our 80s and produce the work that he does. For Tad Kohara, ladies and gentlemen. What? Those of you, when you came in, you might have noticed that we have the banner stretched on the table out over there and several Sharpies. We'd like you to all sign that banner, if you would, and quick little remarks if you would like. And that will also be presented to Tad and to the family, and also this picture will be presented also. So it'll be a nice event for him and nice gesture of our appreciation for him. So thank you for participating with all of that. Let's move on to the next leg of our giant extravaganza here, and that is the Best of Show, or the People's Choice Award, which is another thing that this board of directors and the president and the ACA has instituted. They've been coming up with a lot of good programs, and I think the free food is a wonderful program that we can give Dave a round of applause for that. Carol, would you help us for a second? We want to try to link up each of the cue makers with their cues. And I'll see if I can go through the list here and get each of the cue makers to stand up when she holds up the cue. And if I have the numbers, are you going to open that? Yeah, will somebody help her open those? People's Choice is probably the best way to do any kind of judging, so that's the way that this has been done. The first cue is Jim Buss cue. Jim Buss standing right up here. Wave your hand there. Thank you. Jeff Prather, Prather Cues. There's Jeff in the back. RC3, Richard Chudy. Andy Gilbert. No, stand up, Andy. I had to do that. AE, who's here? There you are, Bruce Kuhn, AEQs. Jerry Olivier. Jacoby, there it is. There. RJH. Byrne Custom Cues. Chris Byrne. Robertson. Where are you there? Hiding over here. Klein Custom Cues. Steve Klein. Keith Josey. Mike Capone. Where's Mike? Jerry Peachhour. Who's here from Peachhour Cues? Russ Espiritu, Espiritu Cues. Black Creek. Durban. Pete Tonkin. There's Pete hiding in the back of the room. We remember seeing his face a little more prominently last year at this event. Stacy, one of our new members. Joss Hughes. Where's Danny? Steve. Shirts. Chris Nitty. Where's Chris? Chris Nitty. Dale Perry. And Downey Hughes, last but not least. Another one of our new members. Big round of applause for all of our Cuemakers here. What do you have there? Second runner-up, first runner-up, and Cuemaker of the Year People's Choice Award. These are all basically pool players. I think it would probably be more fitting to call it win, place, and show. I think they might understand a little bit better. But second runner-up. Drum roll, please. Andy Gilbert. Come on up, Andy. Cue number 4. Don't run off. Actually, that stay there. That's probably fine. Get a little. Nothing intended by that one.
Can I go yet? No.
This one's hard to read. Will you read this one? Jacoby Hughes. And the winner is the moment we're all waiting for. Pete Tonkin. That's 2 years in a row, huh? 2 years in a row, ladies and gentlemen, Pete Tonkin. Beautiful work. Congratulations, Pete. You won't be invited next year, but we... Yeah. Big round of applause for all of our participants here. Okay. This is your opportunity to take some pictures of the best of show. And then after this, we're going to get Keith up here as Cuemaker of the Year with his family, and we'll take some photographs there. Now, don't let the Cuemakers run off. We do want to get all of the Cuemakers, if we can, into a group photo with them and their cues. Thank you very much, gentlemen.